Hey, welcome back. All right, so we talked about the setting with copy warning, and we alluded to the difference between a copy and a view in the previous lecture. In this one, we will more closely explore this important concept and look at ways to avoid the uncertainty and the warning once and for all. Whenever we index or extract slices or apply a method to our data frame, we technically run into this question of whether we are working with a copy or a view. And to briefly define these terms again, a view is like a window into the underlying data. It's like an opening that gives us direct access to the data. What we see is what's really in the data frame. And so if we modify what we see, we end up modifying the data frame. A copy, on the other hand, is a replica of what's in the data frame. It may be a different one, or it may look very similar. It might even be exactly the same shape, including all the rows and all the columns. But it's still a copy. At the end of the day, it's a different, distinct object. So if we change the copy, we don't affect the underlying data frame. So I hope this concept of working with a copy or a view is clear. But how do we know if Pandas is giving us one or the other, like practically? In order to simplify our reasoning and practice, let's think of it in terms of these two basic principles. So I've come up with this 2-point rule here, which I believe captures 90% of the intuition in this problem. There are some other nuances, but I don't think they're that essential. So let's go through it. So the first thing is that Pandas loves to give us copies. Always assume we get a copy. But if we use the log, ilog, or at and iat indexers, we are guaranteed by Pandas to get a view. In other words, start by always assuming that we're working with a copy. Any method that includes an in-place parameter is, by the way, guaranteed to be giving us copies if in-place is false. So methods like drop duplicates, drop NA, all of those return copies of the data frame. Their in-place parameter is set to false by default. Obviously, any values you set on the output received from these methods will not impact the underlying data frame, right? It cannot, because we're only changing the copy in those instances. Now, say we are about to change a couple of values, and we need to guarantee that we are working with a view, right? We want to make sure that the values in the underlying data frame change, and we also want to avoid the setting with copy warning. How do we go about doing that? The short answer is to always use the log or ilog indexers, or the at or iat indexers if we are setting a single value, right? Because these guarantees, Pandas guarantees to give us a view in such cases. Let's switch back to our notebook. And for example, if we want to change or set multiple values at once, say we'll set the position for the first 4 players to a bunch of other positions. Start by selecting them. Use the log indexer here to select the first 4 and then the position column, and then set that to other positions: CM, RW, CB, GK. Let's take a look at our players' data frame to see if the changes took effect. And sure enough, they did, right? They changed. Let's do another one. Let's replace, for example, all the players with an Aaron first name with what is likely to have been their nickname at some point in their life. First, let's see how many such players there are. So we'll Aaron to nickname. Let's see how many such players there are. Players, name, SDR starts with This is another string method, which we will explore in a future section. But essentially, we're using the str string accessor method to access the starts with on a pandas series, which is players.name. Okay. So let's see how many errands we have. Okay, so there's 4 of them. And let's do the replacement. So we say players.log, players.name str starts with Aaron, and then that gives us, a data frame slice as we see above here. So let's now select the name column from that, and let's set it to Ronnie. Supposedly this is the nickname. Sorry for making this ridiculous, though somewhat likely assumption. So we're using a Boolean mask here to isolate the players whose first name is Aaron, and then we select the name column from that resulting data frame slice, and in the end we set it to Ronnie. Now it looks like the change took effect. We didn't get a warning, but did it actually? We can confirm by looking at these labels. So 15, 157, 176, 455, and sure enough they're all now Ronnie, from Aaron to Ronnie. So in both of these examples, we managed to successfully change the values in the underlying data frame without triggering the setting with copy warning. Why is that? Well, because there's no uncertainty over whether we get a copy or a view when using the log or ilog or the add or iadd indexers. Pandas guarantees us a view. Importantly though, this guarantee only works if we use the indexers on the original data frame. Notice how we're saying players.log in both cases, players.log, players.log. We could easily break this rule if we, for example, come up with some strange, do not do this. It's not code. Okay, so we can break it by saying something like players.age and then ilog1 equals to 12, right? So we're breaking the rule here. And the reason is because, okay, so let's see, we'll get the warning for sure. Similarly, if we do players drop duplicates and then a .log, 3 position is CM. So this is also breaking the rule. Notice that in both cases, we're using ilog and log. But we're chaining an indexer that is guaranteed to return a view only after we're first indexing with something that is not guaranteed to get a view. So by the time that we use ilog or log, which is guaranteed to get us a view, it's already too late, because by that point, we no longer know what we're working with. Pandas does not guarantee that we're working with a view still, right? In this case, it doesn't guarantee. In this case, it guarantees that it's a copy. Okay, so that's a view versus copy. It's an important advanced concept in Pandas, something to be aware of when working with data frames for sure. Again, my recommendation is to not turn the warning off, the setting with copy warning off, but instead use a couple of basic guiding principles to stay away from the pitfalls that the warning is meant to help us avoid. Okay.